And taxis on our roads and less people taking taxis due to the economic downturn, we decided to carry out an exclusive survey with taxi drivers across the country to find out the true state of the industry and how it affects passengers.
The survey has revealed that 83% of taxi drivers admit to working extreme hours, some even up to 80 hours a week. We took to the streets to find out people's reaction of these shocking figures.
It's easy to lose concentration at the best of times, I suppose. So. Definitely would if they're up to that level of hours, I would, yeah.
Most professions aren't allowed to work over 40, 50 hours a week anyway, so obviously if you're doing something like taxi driving or you do actually have people's lives in your hands, it would be pretty bad.
Not particularly. I mean, 70 hours is long, people do get tired, but you know, lots of people do 70-hour weeks and carry on with their job, so if they're responsible and kind of know their own limits, they should be able to manage it.
Once they take the appropriate breaks, there shouldn't be an issue.
It would, of course, as a road user, it would. The volume of hours they're doing, I don't think will be safe to other pedestrians and other road users.
It would be something I could say, but it still feels safe enough. Once they're still able to get on and do the job, I'd be happy with that then.
Well, joining us now is Ciara Riordan, the Daily Show researcher who conducted the survey, Conor Falkland, Director of Policy at AA Ireland, and Vinnie Kearns, who's worked in the taxi industry for over 20 years. Thank you all for joining us.
Guys.
Ciara, we're going to start with you. You conducted the survey. Tell us how you went about it, first of all.
Well, it was an online and telephone survey done with over 350 taxi drivers all over Ireland, but we had taxi drivers from Zambia, Nigeria, Vietnam, you know, filling out the form as well, which was great. It was done over a one-week period, and it was confidential, which is quite important. And I suppose the main areas we covered was abuse from the public, working hours and conditions, stress and suicide rates, and illegal taxi drivers in operation.
And Ciara, what are the main findings from the survey?
Yeah, well, as you heard earlier, 83%, which is 4 out of every 5 taxi driver we surveyed, work more than 50 hours a week, with over half working more than 60 hours a week. But the important part is that some admitted to working 80 hours a week, which is a hell of a lot of hours. The main reason for working these hours due to the downturn, you know. And another question we focused on was illegal taxi drivers in operation, and 75% admitted that they knew of illegal taxi drivers. And I saw some of the quotes were that they share one licence between them, they're not properly insured or road taxed, many are working in a county that they're not licensed to be in, some are parking illegally, so you've loads of those quotes going on.
Okay, Conor, what I want to focus on with you really is this working 80 hours a week, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week. How dangerous is that?
Well, it is potentially very dangerous. I mean, there is the Working Time Directive, which actually restricts the amount of hours that a driver can work, and that usually applies to truck drivers and HGV drivers, and it's quite strict. They can't go above 56 hours driving in a week. They can't drive for more than 4.5 hours without taking a break. But those regulations don't apply to taxi drivers generally, because they don't apply to the self-employed. So these guys are, I guess, free to work themselves to death, if you like. And one of the problems that presents is the reason for that directive is that when drivers are fatigued, they are dangerous, and that's no myth, that's statistically proven. And even if we're mostly thinking about truck drivers going up and down motorways, if you've got a guy who's putting in 80 driving hours per week, there's no way he's going to be at his full level of concentration. And I'm aware of one story, I'm sure there are more, but I'm directly aware of one story where an ordinary member of the public was in a taxi and actually had to grab the wheel late at night because the taxi driver had literally dozed off and was wandering across the lanes. Clearly it is inherently dangerous, and a difficult area to police when the guys are having to work those hours to make a living. And
Vinnie, you've been involved in this industry for over 20 years, you have your own company now. Do you know guys who are driving for 60, 70, 80 hours a week?
Sadly, I have to say yes. I would be aware of many taxi drivers who have driven 60, 70 hours a week. I'm aware of taxi drivers who have fallen asleep at the wheel. I've heard stories from customers who have literally grabbed the steering wheel to wake the driver, and it is dangerous. It should not be allowed. But the Working Time Directive does not apply to taxi drivers. Now, on the other hand, a lot of the taxi drivers' 80 hours would be spent sitting at a rank waiting for jobs, so it's not all working hours, but nevertheless, drivers are exhausted. It should be some control on it, and I think if everybody sits down and puts the thinking cap on, there is an answer to this. What about the issue of illegal taxi drivers then? I mean, we've no evidence that this is happening, only what we're getting back from our survey results. Are you aware of illegal taxi drivers operating? I spent 15 years as Vice President of the Taxi Union before running my own company, and even today I'm aware of taxi drivers out there operating with forged documentation. there's little or no policing, and the real problem is there are rules there, but there are no policing of the rules. There are 9 enforcement officers for the 26 counties, and that's 24/7, 365. So many taxi drivers have never come across an enforcement officer in their full career. That would be spanning over maybe 30 years.
Yeah.
Would you like to see an officer in, say, in every city or big town in Ireland?
I think we need to go a little bit further than that. There needs to be sufficient numbers of enforcers, especially in the main city, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Dublin. And people know, these guys, these rogue taxi drivers know when the enforcers are in town. And because there are so few, if they put up a checkpoint, say, in Camden Street, these guys just avoid Camden Street. If they put up a checkpoint on Stephen's Green, they avoid Stephen's Green. So what you really need is you need a crack squad that will move in and set up checkpoints in 4 or 5 different areas that they can't, if they get by one, they won't get by the next.
Ciara, I want to come back to you because there were some other interesting findings in there as well, particularly in relation to taxi drivers who've experienced abuse from the public.
That's right. 88% of the taxi drivers we surveyed have experienced verbal or physical abuse, and that's obviously from the public, but half of them experience that on a weekly and monthly basis, so it's quite weekly. And the main reason is that they say people are intoxicated, that people are drunk, and then that's where the abuse comes from. Now, one taxi driver wrote, "I was cut and slashed with a broken bottle. My left arm was left permanently scarred because I wouldn't give a 70-cent discount off a fare." Like, there was lots of other ones saying that they'd been mugged, they'd been knifed, there was syringes held against them. One taxi driver had been hospitalised 3 times, and one taxi driver had 20 blows to the head by a bottle. So they were the kind of incidents that they were saying. Then another topic that we asked them was about stress and the recent press coverage of taxi drivers dying by suicide, and 94% said stress was an issue due to their current working conditions, and an overwhelming 98.8 believe that this is the reason that taxi drivers are taking their own lives.
Well, these are just absolutely awful stories.
Well, they are, and it paints a picture of a very difficult industry in which to work. I mean, I'm sure they do get exposed to the worst side of Irish society because, you know we have an alcohol problem in this country, and late at night in every town and every city in the country, you will get people who are drunk and obnoxious, and you get people who, but during the ordinary day, they're perfectly nice people. They get a few beers on board, and they will abuse a taxi driver. They will make racist comments. They will make unpleasant comments, and if you want to find the worst in Irish society, I suppose one way to seek them out would be to try and work as a taxi and to ply the ranks of the towns and cities late at night. Doesn't surprise me that they're coming across this, and I think it's a pretty disappointing picture of Irish society. I hope it's not a true picture. I hope there's more to us than that, but I guess it doesn't surprise me.
Vinny, what about your own experiences of abuse when you were behind the wheel?
I drove a taxi for many years in my early years in the taxi business, and I myself, I have a scar on my finger there where a young lad tried to put a knife in my face to rob me. Didn't ask for money, just produced the knife. Now, I have to say, over a period of 26, 27 years, I've had 2 or 3 experiences, but I've experienced assault, both verbally and physically. I've attended court cases where some of our lady taxi drivers have been attacked with a syringe full of blood and rods, and that was covered extensively in the media. Some taxi drivers who never returned to the taxi industry after. And one particularly sad case of a taxi driver who, after the beating that he received, he would no longer even travel in a taxi. He never drove a taxi from that day and never travelled in a taxi, and his father would be a personal friend of mine.
Petrified. OK, well, we did invite the taxi regulator, Kathleen Doyle, to come on the show. We were told she was unavailable. We did get a statement, though, from the National Transport Authority. They take driver and passenger safety very seriously. They say the authority recognises that the taxi industry is a highly competitive one, with self-employed drivers working longer hours than may have been the case historically. However, its own research, this is the authority's own research, does not suggest that passengers are being put at risk. I want to thank our guests on this topic today, Vinny Kearns, Conor Falkland, for coming on the show, and Ciara, who carried out that survey as well. And if you want to look at all of the findings of that taxi survey, you can go onto our website, rte.ie/TV/The Daily Show. Thank you all.